November, so we should go back then. Well, he will be going back then, and any of us who can go probably should, because that'll be when they make a recommendation to the council, and it'll be the council who makes the final decision about how the zoning goes. And if we don't get the zoning, we're back to square one, except that we do have a few possibilities, but they're all out in the county. So that, and then as for a transportation update, it's just, Julie, do you want to talk about your meeting with?
Sorry, could I quick ask a question? You said if the Fullerton Pike, it didn't work out, you had some backup options. When I was watching the August 31st commissioners work session, you shared that there was actually 3 parcels that sounded like they were downtown that were considered as a backup. Do you know how large those parcels are and where they're located?
They're basically, they're unlikely to be big enough. You know, if we were forced into it, maybe we could make it work, but probably we would still need zoning changes from the city. And so
they're in city property then?
Pardon?
They're city property?
No,
yes,
they're in the city. They're not city property.
Just out of curiosity, where are they and how large are they?
It's property owned right now by the convention center.
Oh, by the convention center? Oh, so just down the street
So
from where the
it's
Justice Building is now.
Third College Walnut, south.
second.
Yep, south to Second.
Yeah. So there would be that possibility, but obviously the city would not be very pleased with that. It's kind of a last resort possibility. We've also, well, we've discussed North Park, but that's not in the city. So we're going to, wherever we go, it seems that there will be the possibility of transportation problems. But we have a number of different ways of working them out. Julie and Peter, I think you've been involved in discussions with, okay. Then Julie, do you want to say a bit about where things are at?
Yeah, so we just had the initial meeting with Bloomington Transit, and it was exploratory because we don't have property purchased yet. We have an offer on property at Fullerton, and that offer is contingent on city zoning approval and contingent on it being an appropriate parcel physically, because there are potential issues regarding drainage and sinkholes and things like that. So all of those surveys are being done now, and geotechnical surveys are being done now. And we have the property at Fullerton Pike on the next Plan Commission, City Plan Commission agenda. So that's the November meeting. And Mr. Cockrell is trying to get a time organized, and we'll let you all know where we can actually tour that vacant parcel. So he's working on that as well, not just for this group, but also for City Plan Commission or City Council members who are interested. We don't have a date for that yet, but they're going to have to do some mowing and make it amenable to even park a car and traverse. We do recognize the significance of transportation as an issue no matter where we are, and that transportation is not something that we can move past where we are currently, which is after having those initial discussions and some really good conversations with Bloomington Transit. And, you know, they're not in a position to say, yes, we will do X, Y, Z. And we're not in a position to say, here's where our property is going to be. So we're in a holding pattern. And there really isn't anything else for this group to do at this point regarding transportation. We recognize it's really the council and the commissioners who are going to have to make this happen, because if it turns out that we cannot utilize Bloomington Transit, then we're going to have to come up with something else and pay for it. And we're perfectly well aware that this has to be solved, but there's nothing that can be done regarding transportation at this point until we have property. And in fact, one of the key questions that comes up is about how, would Bloomington Transit access Fullerton Pike? Well, Fullerton Pike's not even built yet. So, it's kind of early for a lot of these questions for them as well. But clearly there are some mutually beneficial solutions that we talk through, and I'm really optimistic. A really good group to work with, a couple of board members and Mr. Connell, who's the head of Bloomington Transit. So we had some good discussions, but at this point, until we have property, there's nothing else we can do.
So I do. Oh, go ahead.
So I really appreciate the update, and I'm glad to hear that there's stuff going on with Bloomington Transit, but of course that's, I would say, maybe a third of the overall transportation concern. The bigger concern, and I think the more, obviously this is up to the commissioners and council to worry about the money part of it, but the more expensive concern is the transport of inmates.
Right.
And if we
Yes.
are not going to be co-located, I think we need to start talking in very great detail. And that's certainly, I'll turn to Commander Crow. How many inmates need to be transported to court on a daily basis on average? And I think we need to know that and know the cost, because that's going to be a real issue.
That's really something that the council will think about, the cost and all.
Yeah.
And we know at this point that we can't co-locate immediately. So we're going to have to find a solution for that in the interim, no matter what.
But we also know that we are probably going to utilize fewer staff
Yeah.
in a new jail facility than we use in the current jail facility because of the way that it's set up. And Commander Crow can probably talk to that. So there's going to be some give and take there in terms of the operational costs, but we recognize that, yes, safety is an issue, transportation is an issue. There are a lot of aspects of it that will have to be addressed.
Yes, there.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I just had a question about that follow-up. You said we'll need less personnel with the new facility. So have we gotten to the point we've figured out facility design? Because I think what we're also
No.
getting.
No.
Oh, okay.
No.
I just wasn't sure how we knew there's going to be less personnel, because I actually think because of transportation, we'll need more. And that's because if you're going to be transporting inmates between a non-co-located jail and the justice system, you're going to have to transport a large number of people on a weekly basis, which is going to incur additional costs that you're not currently accruing. And in addition to that, you're probably going to have to maintain some type of personnel here for holding for periods of time for security issues. So I think you might actually have to increase the number of personnel. And I think the reason this is particularly relevant to the conversation is because Mr. Cockrell shared one of the first decision points that you have to make is jail size and bed capacity. And if they're not going to have the funding to be able to co-locate for 5 to 10 years, and you're incurring additional costs throughout those 5 to 10 years that you're not currently incurring, I think that impacts how big of a jail that you're going to build initially. If not, you might have some significant fiscal impacts that we're not taking into account, in addition just to the challenge of safely transporting individuals from one place to the other.
I don't want to speak for Julie, but I think she might have been thinking you're going to need fewer people within the facility.
Right.
Some of your existing staff might be able to transport. Is that what you were
Right.
thinking?
Right.
Yes.
Because the idea is that I don't think the number of beds have been decided yet.
No.
The design hasn't been decided yet, but because it'll be one level, I think everybody's pretty much who's building facilities these days suggests that inmates are on a single level in a pod design. Is that right? kind of a
That's
pod
what we're
design.
hearing.
So the idea is it would be a pod, fewer staff needed to monitor the people within the facility. Therefore, existing staff might be available for transportation. That's at least what I read into it. Is that what you're thinking?
Yes, and I think that we need to remember that we're really trying to think about all of this differently. We
Mhm.
aren't looking to just rebuild the same system in a bigger manner. So that, there are going to be a lot of moving parts, and there's going to be a lot of chicken and egg things, and it's just going to take some working through it all. But we kind of need to do it in the order that we can. And what we are doing is we've sent out an RFQ to the jail designers that have worked in Indiana. And hopefully by the end of the year, we'll have got a response from them, at which time we're going to ask them to come in with demonstration models, so that, or however they want to demonstrate what they would be thinking about doing, and let the whole committee look at all the different ideas, and then also open it to the public to see what people's ideas are. Yes, Catherine.
I just wanted to clarify, I think what I heard April say, and what I'm concerned about, is that the costs of inmate transportation might be so high that it wouldn't make sense to not co-locate immediately. I don't know the answer to that. That's not my
Yes.
place to answer it. I just want to make sure that question is put on the table for your all's consideration. I don't have the data, I don't know. But
That-
it's such a serious expense
As
that
I
I just want to
say,
make sure we know.
That is something that the council will ultimately look at all the expenses and decide what can happen and what can't happen. There'll eventually be a request for proposals, and we'll be able to compare those different proposals. This is mostly all stuff we need to determine what land we have. Is the first step in the whole process. Then we need to think about what size it'll be and what the focus will be. And once those things are determined, then we get into a lot more details, and probably a few other things I didn't think of. Peter?
Did you want to
No,
say something?
no, go ahead.
So the next meeting of the Plan Commission in terms of land purchase is November the 14th at 5:30 PM in City Council chambers. I have that correct?
Yes.
And I know that there was some folks there that were testifying on behalf of the reasons why this is a good idea, why we wanted to build a new facility on this land. Will that option be available on the 14th for members of this body to attend as well?
Yes.
Members of the public can make public comment at the meeting,
Yeah,
either via Zoom or in person.
and then there will be another opportunity when it goes to the council.
But
So,
those comments are time limited, though.
yeah,
Yes, they are.
yes.
Yes, they are.
Okay, oh, yeah, Jen.
No, I just wanted to just make a comment to both April and Judge Stafford. Like, I know it's been mentioned that it is up to the council to look at those costs, but just as a point of clarification, like, just as a comment from myself, not speaking from other colleagues, I do hear what you are saying, and I do think that that is important, and that is something that I personally also would be interested in as well. But I just wanted to put that out there.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. It's just that what I'm trying to say is we're not quite at that point yet. We need to get a few more things settled and knowing exactly what we're going to be doing. So anyhow, the next two things on the agenda. Yes.
Before we move on, could we see if there's any public comment on this really important topic of land and or transportation?
We haven't typically done that, at least in the midst of a meeting. I think it would be, considering that we have a little bit of stuff to work through and we have limited time, I think we probably do not want to be taking public comment on every agenda item.
we've been hearing from quite a few people that they want to be speaking on these really important topics. So if we're not going to be speaking after every agenda item, were you going to have a period within the time limit of this meeting by which the public could offer their opinions and comments?
Do you want to have public comment at the end? Do you want to reserve some time at the end?
If we have time, both Julie and I can't stay much longer than 6, or Julie has to leave by 5:45. What we will definitely be doing is having public meetings where the whole intention is to hear from the public. And I don't, if people are feeling, I'm not sure, because at this point, our problem is getting the land, getting the zoning, deciding on the size and that kind of thing. It's kind of jumping the gun a bit to get into all kinds of, to really get into the weeds with it.
I disagree, but I'll let my colleague take up the point.
Sorry, I'm like jumping. So I would say that I'm and thinking about how these meetings have been going, and I know we had a lot to discuss, but I tend to think that what the public has to say is something that is important. It might be jumping the gun for a lot of other reasons, but regardless of the fact, this is a public meeting. And I do feel like our public needs to feel like they are being heard. It is tax dollars, and it is important as elected officials and other members of body in various capacities in the county. But I also know that we don't really follow Robert's rules for these types of meetings. So I personally would like to say that I would tend to make a motion to have public comment and limit that for about 10 minutes towards the end of this particular meeting.
Second.
Yes. Was that a motion? Okay.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I thought it was. I second that motion.
I said it, yeah.
Okay, well, then everyone in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay,
I'll watch the clock and in 1 hour from now,
okay,
we'll have public comment.
sounds good. We don't really have much in the way of updates on substance use disorder and mental health at this point. Those are more like placeholders right now. Margie and I have been discussing.
Can we back up to the opioid settlement just real quick?
Pardon?
Can we back up to the opioid settlement real quick?
Okay,
So we have had information about an audit coming down into the county to collect as much data as possible.
yes.
To determine the uses of the opioid settlement money, and that'll be split into those two pots of limited uses and non-limited uses. And I think that's really important to talk about at this meeting, because so much of what we're hearing in our jail right now is about substance use disorder, and it affects recidivism, and the uses of those funds can certainly help to potentially reduce recidivism rates in our jail, especially with a health focus. I think that that's going to be something that, I just wanted to make sure that we're talking about that.
Yes,
What audit are you referring to? I'm sorry. What audit are you referring to?
Is what the health department is doing?
No, we've heard that what's going to happen as the funds come into the state is that they're going to be coming to different communities and looking for data on the ways that we're pursuing solutions to substance use disorder prevention. And they're going to be as data centric as possible. And I believe that's going to be the FSSA. I don't have the email in front of me though.
I haven't seen that email, but are you saying that there was an email that came through to the county about, is it from Becky Booners and Doug Hunsinger's office? So that's consistent. I haven't seen that email, but it is consistent with the conversation I had with Becky. She had said that they were going to essentially be surveying counties, audit survey, asking counties what certain things they had in place, like, do you have Narcan? Do you, these sorts of things. And I said, well, I bet we'll be able to check a lot of those boxes.
Yeah.
She said, well, we're going to make you have data. We're going to make you have data to back it up, which may be, one of the reasons you guys are focused on so much on interest in, and that is later in the agenda.
Yeah, yeah, actually, that's what I was just trying to get to, is that the commissioners are going to work on hiring an outside group to collect data and it'll be various different kinds of data, but we're talking about not opinions, not people's ideas. We're talking about actual data. And we would have to sign that proposal, however it happens. And then I think it would go to the council for an appropriation. But one of the things we have been talking about, a public facing dashboard. And I think Margie and I were talking about how that's probably moving ahead a little too quickly. And what we really need to do is we need data to be able to make our decisions and hopefully have it by the end of the year. So hopefully that's going to, towards the end of the year is going to be when we can really start moving forward. By then we'll know whether or not we have that property. We'll be in a much better position to move forward. And that is something that will be taken care of.
Which data that you're wanting before the end of the year to make which decision, just so I can.
I assume that we will be hearing what data they're interested in. And
Are we talking about the Center for Collaborative Systems Change?
no, I think we're still talking about the audit that Peter mentioned. And
Okay, so first of all, the public facing dashboard was recommended in the Ray study. They could not get access to enough data, they felt, to come to conclusions that they wanted, and they recommended that we have a more transparent public facing dashboard. So that recommendation comes directly from the Ray study. We also know that when Eric Grauman gave his presentation, he was a little concerned because he had some issues collecting data as well. Now, I don't think a public facing dashboard is the end all be all to, what data that researchers can have access to. And I don't think we want all data out there. But two areas of concerns that we've heard about are from those two reports. So the Ray study is on the jail, and the Eric Grauman study you know about is about the prosecutor's office.
Go ahead.
No, and I know that the commissioners are interested in data as well, so that you guys have some data to make decisions that you feel like you need, right?
Right, but we're planning to hire an outside group. I expect them to, at some extent, figure out what data is needed and what data is being collected now, what data isn't being collected that we need. We will work with them, and if we can get any more information about what kind of data they're looking for with this audit, we can go ahead and include that.
And who has the email that you're referencing? Is that something you can send my way?
Yeah,
Let me.
Yeah,
I will look for that in a second here.
So one of the things I want to say about the Eric Grauman, I've talked with him, and I think it's my understanding that Miriam Northcutt-Bomert, who's working with the courts and probation and pulling data for them, and Eric Grauman, who's working with the prosecutor's office, have talked with each other and are, know each other, collaborate. I had reached out to them both and said, they both had said they had access to data from the correctional center. And I said, and this was a conversation with Troy Hatfield, if anybody was actually pulling data and if either of them were using data. And they said that they aren't currently pulling data and using that data. And I think one of the ideas is, and this comes from Ken Ray, and commissioners have talked about this, is to have an integrated approach to data collection. And you've talked about it as well. Again, some stuff could be public facing, some may or may not be, but certainly to have one approach to one, like integrated approach to data collection. I worked, and I know the other county attorneys worked directly with the consultants who came up with that recommendation and said, hey, we're having trouble getting data. It's in large part because we have systems that don't talk to each other, software systems that aren't, like, the prosecutor has a system, and then we have Odyssey for the courts, and then the correctional center has a system. So the idea is trying to pull the information together. Some of that data may be the very data that the state's looking for.
Yeah.
Could be. But I think the sort of bigger picture is that the commissioners are interested in things to make sure that when they're approving contracts or programs, or, in the council, when they do funding, to make sure that you're making data-driven decisions, as you said, not just somebody's random thought or opinion.
Yeah, yes, Darcy.
I didn't mean to interrupt, but since we were talking about data and the reports and the substance abuse, the one thing I wanted to encourage the commissioners to, I guess, be mindful of, because it was made super clear at the last meeting what, at least from my perspective, the courts, the prosecutors, the defense attorneys' roles were the continuances and the length of time it takes a case to move through the system.
Yes.
With the focus on substance abuse, which I think is huge. And
Yes.
when, from my perspective, I release people all the time to substance programs. I just encourage you guys to be mindful that that is going to slow the cases down even more, because treatment takes time. I mean, there are programs that go anywhere from 30 days up to 2.5 years. So again, I know that, and this is getting so off topic, but to some extent, if this is what we're looking at in terms of what this new jail is going to do and what programs we have, or you want there, I would just encourage you guys to be mindful of the length. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but the length of the programming that, it actually takes to get people to complete.
We are aware of that. And we're also actually looking at programming within the community itself that will hopefully avoid anyone coming into contact with law enforcement. And also, once people leave the jail, we're going to be wanting programming to continue then. So what we're looking for is a continuum. And the details are going to come into place as we move along. And as for the public facing data board, dashboard, that is something that is still an ultimate plan. We just figure we're going to move towards it a little more slowly. We're going to try to collect all the data and find out what we can. And at that point, we'll start determining what more data is needed and what a public facing dashboard would include.
So you mentioned you need some data in order to make some decisions by the end of the year. Could we narrow that down just to help me? Because when we talk about data, it feels like there's a lot of different components to that. What type of data do you need by the end of the year?
Well, I mean, really, this is what we're trying to do, is pull data from the community corrections. We want data from the courts, from probation, from public defender and prosecution. And it's going to be different data that we're looking for from each of them. Or in some cases, it'll be exactly the same, but there will also be differences. And these are things that we're working out.
Do you want me to mention the Center for Collaborative Systems Change, which is next?
Yes.
So I'm going to share my screen real quick if I can. Julie, did you have something you want to say?
Basically, we just got a text from Jeff Cockerell saying that he's set up the visit to the property for Friday at 3.
Isn't this Friday
This Friday?
This Friday is the mental health summit for JRAC.
Yeah.
That's probably a bad time to do it, because most of the people are going to be at the JRAC Mental Health Summit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's, so that this Friday, just as a reminder, is the State Justice Reinvestment Advisory Commission has a mental health summit at the Convention Center up in Indianapolis. So let me share my screen and talk about the Center for Collaborative Systems Change, which is on your agenda. Hold on. There's a whole Zoom thing. There we go. Okay. All right, so this group who here has heard of the Center for Collaborative Systems Change? Anybody? Yep, but I want to, has anybody done any work with them, or do you know the people that are involved? So I spent a little bit of time talking to them today. They're going to have a proposal that's coming out soon to the county. I haven't seen it. Nobody's seen it yet, but they're going to be giving the county a proposal. Here's their focus. Again, they empower communities to maximize their strengths, improve environments so that all individuals, children, and families are safe and supported. They approach research and evaluation in partnership with communities to build local capacity that fosters lasting sustainable change. That fits nicely with the objectives that the county has for building infrastructure that supports humans who need treatment, who need counseling, who need help with addictions. And they really focus on a collaborative approach. And the county is trying to do as much as they can to work with outside entities, much like the sort of heading home plan, I think, is doing, where there's the hybrid between county and the university and not-for-profits. And so sometime soon, I'm expecting the next week or so, the Center for Collaborative System Change will have a proposal. It'll be a proposal that could be modified depending upon what the commissioners think is necessary. It's obviously going to have to be funded by the council. So I think the commissioners and council will have to have some meeting of the minds about what it is they're looking for. But this group can do some of this data collection if there are gaps. And I think that's what you were referring to, is we need to know if there are gaps in the data, because obviously Miriam Northcutt Beaumert's already working with the courts. Eric Groman's already working with Erica and the prosecutor's office. So what else needs to be filled in terms of data? And then at some point, it won't be immediate, but at some point to build that public facing dashboard. So at any moment in time, you might be able, if you're a citizen in Monroe County, you might be able to look at the website, or even not in Monroe County, you might be able to look and say, this is how many people we have in our jail today. So members of the public can't, as far as I know, they can't find anything that says today we have 200 people in the jail, or we have 350 people in the jail. These are the number of women, these are the number of men, these are, breakdown of, and I'm making this up, but breakdown of the charges, ages of people, basically to just tell you sort of what's going on with your correctional center. Might even be able to tell you how many cases are pending, and some information about that.
Yeah, it's even possible that it could include case tracking. Mm-hmm. So not by individual, but in that would obviously not be public information, but how many cases are at what stage and how long have they been there and that kind of thing. Yeah, Catherine.
You're aware that on mycase.in.gov, there is complete case tracking for every case.
Yes, yes, but this will pull that information. So for example, you might not be able to, somebody can go and type in Margie Rice and see how many cases Margie has as an attorney, or Lee Jones and see if she's got how many cases she might have, civil or criminal. But this is going to take data and sort of compile it in a way that tells the public the kind of information that I think the commissioners think will say, yeah, is our jail population under control, or is it, is it higher today than it was yesterday?
It'll be the kind of thing that that will indicate how the system is working and where it's going and whether we have actually made improvements or whether there are areas that we need to work on more. That's more the kind of thing we're looking for. And as I say, that'll be exactly what it is will be determined somewhat by who's being talked to, which information we need from that person. And let's see. And you pretty much, Peter Finn.
No, where there's the Eric. Yeah.
Yeah, well, we weren't able to get Eric Grauman to come here today, and Erica also couldn't. So we don't really have a report on the data that he's collecting, although he did give a preliminary report to the council, and Margie sent out a link to that if anyone wants to look at it.
And Eric and I talked, and she said that when Eric Grauman's report comes out, that she's also going to have a memo that's going to go along with that information. So his study will come out and she'll have some information as well from her. I have had the opportunity to talk to Eric, and I think he's pretty well connected what's going on in Marion County as well. And again, as I said before, he's hooked up with and communicating with Miriam, Northcutt Belmar. So one of the things that Eric has encouraged us to do is if we want to look at the assessment center that Marion County has put in place, they do a pretty quick assessment of people when they come into their facility to basically determine where they need to go, if they need to go into a medical, more medical oriented approach. They basically just do that quick assessment. And I think it's a little different than what Hamilton County mentioned they were doing. And so Eric had said, if anybody's interested, that may be something you guys want to do, is take a look at that.
Yeah, well, and especially the final report and her accompanying memo. Jeff, did you happen to come here to discuss a time and date for viewing the property?
Yeah, if you guys don't mind, it won't take me long.
Okay.
We've had reports from people doing work on the site that it's really just hasn't been a good time to get out there. But we think with the hard freeze over yesterday and the next couple of days that it'll be better. We're going to have an area mowed. Honestly, if it requires more than one time, I mean, unless you guys feel the need to see it as a group, we could do it as a group, or we could just have several different times where we can make sure David Gardner's out there to kind of help facilitate you guys through it. It really doesn't matter. We've just been waiting for a little cold weather to get rid of some bugs. But I also think it's important for you guys to see it. I think it'll put a lot of context into some of the things I've heard here.
Did you happen to hear that Friday isn't going to be a good day at all?
And that's fine. I think we'll probably go ahead and get an area mowed Friday, because that's probably going to be the best day to get somebody out there to do the mowing, because it is supposed to be nice weather and it's supposed to be dry. But you're really, if you just let us know when I'd like to do it at maybe small groups. So
maybe you could give us some times and let us figure out which times each of us can get there.
I guess my feeling is that it'll be ready, should be ready Friday afternoon, anytime in the next week, probably preferably not during regular business hours, or, kind of later in the afternoon would probably be better for scheduling. I got meetings. I don't know if I can attend it or not. I really don't know if it's all that valuable to have me there. I think it's more valuable for you guys just to see what's going on. Honestly, I can talk with David Gardner and see if he could be available 3 or 4 days next week in the afternoons.
Yeah.
What's a good, starting at what, 4, 3, 4, whatever your guys is, 4, starting at 4.
Maybe
even
if he could be there from 4 to 5 on a few days.
Yeah. Yeah, we can work all that out. It's just probably need to start having people look at it while the weather is appropriate, as opposed to waiting till it gets really cold or being.
It has gotten really
Yeah,
cold.
yeah. So, yeah, I mean, it's not a big deal. I mean, and if you can't make any times it's out there, just let us know. We'll figure something out.
You mentioned us possibly attending the city planning meeting. I was just wondering, have you gotten the environmental reports back? I know there was some concerns about drainage that goes into some local neighbors like quarries. And there's no topsoil. I was just wondering some of the environmental reports if.
We've
Could get
gotten a wetlands and jurisdictional waters delineation report. We're going to have a geotechnical, which isn't really, and we've had a phase 1, phase 2. We had a geotechnical report that's coming. That's not really an environmental report. That's to make sure the ground's solid enough that you can build the building on. That should be here anytime. I talked with the vendor today and he says it's probably a little bit more solid than what he's used to seeing in the area, but he hasn't done all his lab work and things like that. Hydrogeology is doing a report to determine where the precise locations of the sinkholes are and doing that kind of a report. I did talk with the neighbor after the plan commission meeting. I think we're going to go walk his area prior to the next meeting. I think that's a much more of a site design issue. And so we'll walk it with him. I also talked to the neighbor immediately to the north and he's agreed to walk with us as well. So we just need to talk to them.
Are we down to 30 or 36 buildable acres now? Are we down to 30 or 36 buildable acres? I couldn't recall.
It's definitional, right? I think what we're talking when we're talking that was the city of Bloomington's planning department, what they'll allow. And it looks like if you look at a 12% slope, it's 30 acres. If you go the 12 to 18 using 50%, you're at 36 or 37. Honestly, I think that the 30 acres is probably adequate for what we've discussed as far as, a jail plus 2 or 3 additional size buildings. I mean, that's one of the reasons I think you guys should really get on site and look at it so you can kind of picture in your mind, essentially when you get on that site and when you look around, if it's not wooded, it's pretty much the buildable area.
So will 30 acres in your estimate be enough for both the 25-acre jail and all of the other justice components and the parking garage?
It's important when we say 25 acres that includes drainage, right? That doesn't necessarily include buildable acres. It's not we need 25 buildable acres to build this facility. The footprint of this facility will be about, and this is a guess based upon what Hamilton County has, between 2 and 3 acres. And it'll have some adjacent parking that's necessary. That'll take up some of that acreage. You'll have a road that goes to that area, which will take up a little bit of acreage. But the 25 is much more so for drainage and those kind of issues, which when we're talking buildable acres does not necessarily include those functions, right? It doesn't have to be buildable to help serve the drainage of the building.
If I might, can I jump in here because something was said and I don't want it out there like it's true. You said, oh, there's no topsoil on the property. We don't know that. That's one of the things they're looking at. The city plan commission mentioned topsoil because if there isn't topsoil and if we purchase the property, we are responsible for replacing any absent topsoil and providing the landscaping that's required. It doesn't mean there is or isn't. That's part of what we're looking at. But I just want to make sure that that's very clear.
And isn't there an elevated part of it that was actually fill from I-69?
Yeah, there's a giant mound of soil in the back. That did come from I-69 when our environmental people looked at it. We know it came from off-site because some of the composition of it.
We're looking at all of that.
Yeah.
We don't have an answer yet.
Kara?
I just wanted to say as a matter of transparency that I was talking to my brother last week and he's been contacted by somebody, and he does hydrogeology work. And so he's been contacted. I was telling him I involved in these meetings. And so since we're advisory and you make all the decisions, I don't think that's a problem, but that just is a matter of
Yeah.
public record. I wanted to disclose that. So, thank you.
I'm not sure where we even got.
Miriam,
Yeah.
I use psychology and brain sciences. I think before this group got expanded, so early on, I had mentioned to the council and the commissioners that Peter Fenn, who's the provost professor, school psychology and brain sciences, had been interested in working with the county. And you may recall he wrote a grant a few years back to work with the county for he was trying to get some IU Grand Challenges dollars. He was not able to secure those. The feedback he got was too much money was leaving the university and going out into the community. So they didn't fund the grant proposal, but just, we can pass it along. Yeah, he had put together a proposal. It hasn't been adopted by the commissioners. It's not been acted upon. He's still very interested. He's also taking a data driven approach. I think he's still interested in working with the county. This is just FYI. There's no decision to be made today. But I do think having somebody with a background in addictions research and impulsivity may be helpful. He was going to look at it from, sort of 3 different prongs, look at programs, look at facilities, and look at data analytics. Now, it may very well be that the Center for Collaborative Systems Change works with him either upfront or, over time, if it's not part of their initial proposal, but it may be that they pull him in. He did meet with Doug Hunsinger prior to the Sam Quinones talk. And I know that he's keeping an eye on what this group is doing. And, because we have a lot of people who are reportedly addicted and have mental health issues, it may be good to pull in some researchers from IU. And I don't know if you want to talk about that, Peter, some of your thoughts.
Well, I just wanted to clarify too, that the Indiana University Brain and Psychological Sciences Department also has a cognitive behavioral therapy lab, also known as CBT. And what we know, this is a nationwide problem, but it also exists here, is we just don't have enough people to be offering cognitive and behavioral therapy in this community. And we certainly know that's true of people that are coming out of our justice facility. And so that's what really interested me about Professor Finn, in particular, the experience that they have there that we can utilize for those purposes.
Yeah, and early on, they also have a child and family cognitive behavior therapy clinic. So you think about kids who are experiencing trauma or chin sports, that kind of thing. So I think, the idea is we have resources in Monroe County that some communities don't have. And so we ought to at least explore those resources and see if anything fits. And that was one of the other ideas, I think, that and Lee, I don't want to speak for you, but one of the things that you found interesting about the Center for Collaborative Systems Change is that they have a lot of connections, both at the state, within the university, and might be able to help sort of pull things together.
Yeah, at this point, a lot of what we're doing is just contacting people and seeing how we can work with them, how we can collaborate with the community in general, and move forward. So, and that pretty much covers the agenda. Julie and I have worked on what we would like to have happen is the different groups of us, we would like you to survey certain parts, how would I say this, Julie, certain aspects of the community. And we've written some questions for you to ask, some things to find out about. The county does have a license for Survey Monkey if you wanted to do it that way, if you prefer to interview people, but we are hoping that each group will come up with their own survey. What we suggested are merely suggestions. And then by the end of the year, we would like information back from this, and that'll give us a little time to collate it. And do you want to add anything, Julie?
Yeah, so there are two constituencies we're going to ask Commander Crowe to survey. One's relating to medical provision in the jail, so it's a small group, and then the other are jailers. We're going to ask the sheriff to survey all law enforcement officers. And so with each of these, we have a series of suggested questions, and then if you want to add more, do so. Then we have community corrections to talk to all the staff, probation, community corrections. We have prosecutor's office, again, for the staff at the office. The courts, the board of judges only, so the 9 judges would be answering questions, but again, you can add more questions than what we've suggested here. Public defender's office. And then for April and Karen for the Bar Association, we have a list of questions too. So, and then there's some other groups that still have to be interviewed or surveyed. And we're going to determine the best way to do that with our council colleagues, since we don't have groups to survey. So the idea is that you can send, if let's say you want to add 2 questions to the suggested list, you can send the questions to Angie Purdy, and she will get technical services to write up the survey. These are open-ended surveys, so you can have this big block where people can type a long answer if they want. It's not a yes/no kind of survey situation. So, and then that information, they would then send you, TSD would then send you a link so that you can then get that out to the Bar Association or the judges or whoever else you're surveying. And the other option would be to send an email to all of the constituencies and to ask them the questions, and then they email you the answers back. But that's harder to collate than it is to use SurveyMonkey. So we wanted to make that service available as an option. It may be that you also want to do some in-person or some Zoom meetings additionally to get more information, more subjective information. These are really subjective surveys, but it's asking a lot of questions that's more facility focused at this time. And then we will go back to the well as needed based on the information that we're trying to accrue at that time. So we are going to, there's instructions involved as well, but we're going to get this information out to everyone in the next couple days. Lee will send it on email. Yeah. Okay. So you'll be seeing this at that point.
Are we as a group going to discuss some of these questions to make sure we have consistency in the questions?
And we can do that.
Sure.
I'm sorry, I thought we were doing this by October 31st. Is this the same conversation?
No.
No, this is what we had asked for by October 31st were your ideas about things.
Individual committee members?
And it's very open-ended. I mean, if there's something that you've been thinking about the jail that would make it better, please let us know. If there are things that you're aware of as being big problems, please let us know. Different people are going to be aware of different things in the jail. And we want to hear from people who interact in all different ways with them.
I guess I was just thinking of data consistency and
I'm
integrity.
sorry, I can't hear you.
I apologize, Lee. I was just thinking of data consistency and integrity. It sounds like we're each individually surveying ourselves and then sending it back. And then separately, we send another list by October 31st of different questions.
No, not at all.
or last meeting.
And now we've expanded on the questions. We've expanded on what we're trying to do. And so we're giving you till the end of the year.
Which area of the criminal justice system, so we're all on the same page, solely
I'm
focused?
sorry.
Which area of the criminal justice system are we focusing on at this time? Is it just the facility that we're
Well,
surveying on?
The part that you're involved in. So
It's actually many parts. So I work with probation, I work with public defender's office.
then you can probably
been in
tell
the
us a
jail.
whole lot.
Okay.
I mean, it's difficult for us to give you the exact questions because we don't know exactly how you interact with the jail, exactly where you see that things could make it easier for what you're doing. Those aren't things that we can really write questions for because we haven't been in your position. So really, we're just asking for opinions.
Okay. Since we did talk a lot about data, I was wondering what weight we're.
That's a kind of a separate thing.
Okay. Since we were talking about it, I was wondering what weight we're going to give the data in the justice report, because it does actually talk about facility issues. I mean, besides the fact that it says that the jail cannot maintain constitutional standards of care, it identifies 53 problem
I'm
areas.
sorry, I can't hear you again.
It's okay. Besides the fact that the report says that the jail cannot maintain constitutional standards of care, it also identifies 53 specific problem areas, including pictures of those within the jail. And it has on pages, I think it's 81, 82 of the report, starts talking about a bed size capacity. So I was wondering where that data plays into these conversations. And maybe we could have one of these meetings where we talk about bed capacity, since that's one of the first decision points.
Well, I think we just determined that we weren't going to do that until we've actually got land and actually know what we're going to be working with. Then we cannot deal with all of the details surrounding this in an hour and a half. It's, it's a huge thing with many, many different components. And people are going to have to think a little independently. I mean, we're not asking for people to find problems with everything other than the jail, but we're looking for suggestions for how things can be better.
So if I can give you an example, maybe this would help. Our question that we're going to ask Sam to survey the jailers about. What should be included or not in a new facility? Consider booking cells, officer safety programming, et cetera. Number 2, what works well in the current facility? Number 3, what doesn't work well in the current facility? Number 4, size of a new facility. And number 5, at some point in the future, should the jail be co-located with other aspects of the criminal justice system, creating a justice campus? And then when Sam sees this list, he goes, I have another question I want to know the answer to, and he can add a question to it. Get this sent over, get a survey monkey done, get it sent out to the jailers. It's pretty simple. So what we're doing is we're adding a layer based on personal experience among staff, among law enforcement officers around this community, whatever group it is. We're taking that basic information that we got in what we're all well aware of in the report, but we're getting another layer of information based on the subjective experience of judges and probation and law enforcement and jailers and the medical staff at the facility. And we're adding another layer of information and getting some creative ideas probably based on people's experience, whatever their experience is, and adding that into what we already know and moving forward from there. This is just adding more information so that we can make a better decision. Does that make sense?
It makes sense to me, and because I think you're right in that every individual component has a different experience and interaction with the jail. Once all of that gets compiled, are we going to then come back and look over it together, or does it stay with the commissioners?
No, we'll all look at it, and I think we may collate it, but certainly everyone should see what it is.
And this is the information we're going to ask for by the end of the year.
Yes.
Even if it's, if you can't put it together in a report, at least send us the raw data and we'll put it together. But if we could get a written report, that would be even better because it'll make our lives a little easier, but we'll do whatever it takes so that in January, we're hitting the ground with this additional information in hand and everyone will have a copy of it.
Okay.
Okay.
And I think also, I mean, the idea is by the end of the year, land will be secured, right? By the end of the year,
hope.
you'll have this, you're hoping, the hope is you have this information. And that then you mentioned early on, you're doing RFQs for designers. Have you already sent out the RFQs or they will be sent out?
I don't think they've been.
Margie, it's Molly. Hi, I'm on Zoom. I can clarify.
Hey, I feel like I'm in the Wizard of Oz. Where is she?
I know
Where's
it's kind of weird.
Hey, Molly.
I was going to clarify on the RFQs. We have not sent them out yet, and the proposed or the projected timeline is to try to get it on the commissioner's work session for next week.
Gotcha. That's
Okay.
helpful. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
And we'll try to set a CJRC time to have them bring their displays and their information here. And we would, instead of meeting like we normally would, we would spend the time talking with these representatives from these various companies. And we could also hopefully potentially open that up for the public to also walk through and see as well. But it might be crowded, so we might need to do this a couple of different over a longer period of time and set some time aside for CJRC only or something like that. But yeah, that's the idea. But our next meeting is a week from Wednesday, so.
No. Oh,
Yeah. And this group meets November 7th and November 21st.
That's great. I was wondering, are there any other facility tours that are planned between now and the end of the year as we're moving towards that deadline?
For our facility or going to see?
Oh,
other-
I've been through our facility. Thank you, though.
Okay.
I meant we were looking at other facilities, other jails.
Yes.
So, yeah, we're doing some other tours. We just had a discussion about another one. We're going to try to book as soon as possible as well. But these are going to have to be smaller group tours because these are operating facilities. So, we're undergoing that process right now. And we could certainly ask if they're willing to have other groups come in and how many people they're willing to have and book additional tours.
Has someone from the Justice Building been invited on this one as a representative?
This one's a small one. We do have Sam's going.
Oh, it's already been planned.
Pardon?
It's already been scheduled.
Yes.
So anytime that we want to go, I can get a schedule for Hendricks County and Hancock County. They both have newer facilities.
And is
And
this
I-
where you're going for the next one?
No, we're
No.
going to Kentucky to look at one there. Franklin County, Ohio, I can get that scheduled about any time. Fulton County, I can get that one scheduled about any time. That's a little bit further of a trip, within Indiana. But basically, anytime people want to go on tours, just let me know where and when, and I can probably make it happen.
It's always best to try to have Sam making these appointments because he can reach out to his colleagues and it's just a sign of respect that we're not all calling and trying to make arrangements. So.
And I think it's really good for us to go and visit some of the other jails that have been designed by different groups. Hamilton County, Vigo County, they were both done by DLC, and then Vigo County had help with our QAW. So I think if we get jails that have been designed by different people, different companies, we can see what their design concepts and different aspects they put into their jails.
Commander Crowe, when we were touring the Hamilton facility, there was that facility in Kentucky that I believe, no, it wasn't Kentucky, it was the Ohio facility, I believe, that had a focus on mental health. And I think is that no tour has been scheduled for that location quite yet, right?
It has not been scheduled yet, but I'm still working on it. And in fact, I just got in touch with one of the architects today to see when the latest time we will be able to go to that facility. They're getting ready to open. And when they open, when they actually get the inmates in, they're going to shut off the tours for a pretty good period of time. So I'd like to get in there before they open.
And is that a DLZ facility?
DLC was the main architect for that facility.
Okay, thank you.
So I have a quick question for the tour that sounds like it's already in the works that some will be going to. Is the thought to go to the tour and then come back and speak like tell us your findings from in this particular committee?
Yes, yes, but also, as Julie said, Sam can arrange another small group to go there. You'll just have to contact him.
This facility we're going to in Kentucky is the one that Sam Quinones talked about in his talks, and it's not a new facility. So we're actually looking at how they have integrated substance use disorder care and mental health care into an existing facility. So this is almost a little bit programmatic in a way more than anything. It's just a point of curiosity for us. It's not a new facility though. So, but we certainly will share everything that we get from that.
Sure.
I would think the Hamilton, Ohio is going to be or Franklin County, Ohio is going to be the really interesting one.
Being that that's one of the biggest things that I know that personally I'm definitely invested in. I think it would be nice. Let me rephrase. I think it would be helpful for the committee also to like be able to, and I don't want to speak for everybody, but it sounds like this is a thought, is that yes, we absolutely do would love to be a part of that. I definitely would have loved to have been able to go to that as well. So I guess in the future, whoever is responsible, Mr. Crow, like it would, if we can, just to know so that if it does have to be smaller groups, that we can all plan our schedules accordingly so that we can go. Because I think we all are definitely.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
What's the maximum number of people that can go to that visit in Kentucky? Is it possible? And what, like, do you already have the date in, and can they, if there are a couple people that would want to tag along, is that still an option or not an option?
Basically, we're going this Wednesday, leaving at 10 because we don't have a commissioners meeting this week. So we all have free time. So, and Sam, I remember they preferred a smaller group.
They did ask for a smaller.
Did they tell you how many you could have? Is it possible that if a council member or somebody from the Justice Center wanted to go, that they could tag along?
I could follow by that. So if anyone's interested, please let me know.
Yeah.
Preferably today.
So, yeah, just get with Sam or let him know. Yeah, so, it might be easier for this facility to do one tour with a couple extra people rather than do 2 tours, perhaps. So I don't know. Anybody, show of hands, who might be interested in going this Wednesday?
Interested but unavailable.
Yeah.
Okay, okay.
See, this is some of the problem is that, if everyone wants to go, when are we ever going to find a time when all of us can
Well,
go?
2 days notice
So-
doesn't really allow us a chance to get a senior judge in to
No.
hear our cases. If we have a couple weeks notice,
As-
we might be able to pull that.
We said, this is not a new facility. So we kind of saw it as a different thing. But if we can certainly ask them when we're there, if more of you could arrange to come, we can tell them that there's a great deal of interest in it. And if anyone does want to come on Wednesday, if Sam gets the okay for it, then that's fine with us. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm keeping track of time. It's 5:42. We were going to start taking public comment at 5:50, but is there anybody else around this table that still has comments, questions, thoughts you want to share? Judge Stafford?
I want to defer to Ms. Wiltz because she has.
Okay, Judge Wilt, I started to say. How about that? I just promoted
I
you.
love it. I'll take it. Honestly, my question was more about the agenda and where we were. Did we get through, it seems like we got through most of number 6, but I don't remember talking about number 4.
Yeah, because those are more placeholders on the agenda. We don't have anything to talk about right at this time, unless you have something you want to bring up. Does anyone have anything?
I do.
discuss about?
Councilmember Wiltz, is that okay if I talk briefly?
Okay.
In the Hill report, Eve Hill mentioned a series of mental health investments that communities can make, and they're in areas of the continuum of care. And so those are things like housing, transportation, childcare. As you kind of think about the different things that are in your own lives and in your own continuum of care. And right now, the Board of Commissioners and the County Council have compiled a list of investment areas in ARPA using these American Recovery Plan funds that really address a series of these areas, including early childhood education, expanding transportation, at least looking into it. It includes multi-millions of dollars of investments in housing, because one of the things that we know is that if we don't have supportive permanent housing for people as they come out of our jail, that a lot of times that has an impact on recidivism rates. So we're looking at these ARPA investments in terms of health and how can we improve the health outcomes in our community so that it makes Commander Crow's job a little bit easier, so that, sometimes we can make sure that, well, actually what we want to do is work you out of a job. And we think that if we can increase the investments in some of these areas, we can get closer to that. I don't think we're ever going to get to that area, but I think we can get closer to it so that we can increasingly reduce the number of people staying in our jail.
And that is going to be a collaborative effort. Each of us have our own part of it that we're going to have to work on to go forward.
And I think it's really exciting you're considering funding. I just want to once again invite you to just stop by the prosecutor's office and spend a day with us in court, or follow the public defender's office and see some of the challenges that they're facing. They're actually in sometimes 3 different criminal courts at once, in addition to a civil court. So I just invite you to spend some time in the Justice Building to figure out what those gaps are that we're trying to work through, and we're making release decisions and recommendations.
I, for one, look forward to that. I also see Linda Brady is on the line, and I won't embarrass her by asking her to speak, but she's made the same offer that they collect a lot of data. They're very evidence-based, as you all are in your offices. And so there's a lot of things to be proud of in this community. But as you said, a lot of the conversations can help identify the gaps where key investments can be made.
Catherine.
I wanted to just inquire as to why we're waiting to get this data back till the end of the year. If this seems to be what's holding up any decisions on number of beds and planning, I don't know that it would take us the rest of the year to gather it.
Then please don't take the rest of the year.
Well,
that we just didn't, everyone is very busy.
Sure.
Some of these people have quite a few people to interview, and we just didn't want to overburden anyone.
Understood. I would propose, in November 15th or something like that, just so that we can analyze the data then in December and have it. But I'm just thinking that seems awfully like a long way off.
Well, November 15th is fine with me. How do the rest of you feel about that?
I had already given the judges a heads up that we needed it by Halloween, October 31st. So we've been working on it now.
The 15th is the Tuesday in between our November meetings. Maybe that is a good time.
Yeah, that would be pretty good. It would give us a chance to collate it.
It's also the day after the City of Bloomington's Plan Commission meeting.
Yes.
So that timing is good.
Yeah.
And have you decided, if last session you shared that you weren't sure if you were going to build a jail or not? Have you just made a decision about whether or not you're building a jail?
What we were talking about is if we're going to build a treatment-oriented jail or a treatment center with secure beds. And we haven't determined that yet. And it's one of the things we would talk to a designer about. One of the big problems that we're going to have to look at is people who can actually provide the mental health care. And there's a shortage of those people. I think we can work with IU to some extent to fill that gap, but it's something we're going to have to look into.
And I can tell you that I know the state of Indiana has recently given one county some funding that they needed. They had a gap in funding. And the Center for Collaborative Systems Change, they're pretty well connected to the state. They're working with Dearborn County, and Dearborn County just got some funding from the state. So I do know that to the extent that that the county focuses on treatment, I think that's also the opioid settlement money is going to be focused on treatment. Feels like a lot of people around here want to focus on treatment. The state wants you focusing on treatment, and may even be able to have some funding to the extent that you head that direction. So I think that was the point of your conversation the last time was, hey, we want to focus on health.
Yeah, yes. And the Center for Collaborative Communities is going to be a good resource for, well, they did comment on how they can probably help with funding in a number of ways, not actually providing funding, but helping us find sources.
Yeah, finding some grant funding.
So, yeah.
And yeah,
Since we want to hear from the public, I was just wondering if we could maybe talk about this next session, continuing the conversation about whether or not it's a jail or a treatment facility, if we could continue at the next agenda.
I think maybe that's what you're wanting some, I mean, well, I'm going to go out here on a limb. If Lee Jones was designing the facility, and I think a lot of other people around that I've talked to around this table, they really want to focus on treatment. I mean, to the extent that you can, so it's going to be, regardless of whether it's a jail with treatment or a treatment center with secure beds, you're going to have a heavy emphasis on treating people who are mentally ill and addicted. Is that correct?
I have to interrupt though. A treatment facility with secure beds is a jail. That's a jail.
Well, it could be a difference without a distinction, but I do think,
I mean,
yeah, absolutely. And
I
I've
can't
talked,
leave.
yeah, right, right.
So I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
But like,
And I've talked to the judge, presiding judge about that. You know, the difference is you have Medicaid, your treatment providers can be reimbursed from Medicaid if the person isn't under a court order.
Yeah.
And so I think that's one of the things that the commissioners want to explore, right?
Yeah.
We need to open public comment.
Yep, exactly. It's 5:51. Yep. Okay, so is there anybody here from the public that wants to, that's here in the room that wants to come up and speak? Anybody? Come on up. And do you want me to watch the time? Do you want, okay. Oh, great. They put it up there. Perfect.
Can you come up to this microphone here? And you,
Oh, wow. Thank you.
thank you.
It was just heart touching sitting there, knowing that the young man was talking about mental illness. Yes, yes.
She just called me a young man.
I'm sorry.
For the record.
He was talking about mental illness and, oh yes, my name is Tayako Davis. And yeah, I'm currently working on my PhD in human services and social work. And I was invited here and I'm pleased with what I'm hearing. And as I was stating, the young man was talking about mental illness and opiates and drug usage. And I recently lost my son a few days ago to mental illness and drug addiction. And for a long time, I reached out to the city for help. And I just felt as though that we lost the battle because the system let him down. And my whole focus is the jail is great. I think building a new jail is, awesome. But what about a mental hospital to in-house our individuals that's out here walking around struggling, don't know what to do or who to turn to?
That's something that the state is working on also right now. And it's an area we're going to explore along with the idea of a treatment center with secure beds, is that it might kind of be divided into two parts. And one part would be the secure beds and another part would be a treatment center that was more available for the public and possibly for people who are in the secure beds to then transfer to it, which would then give us access to some Medicaid money, which could help things out quite a bit. So we're exploring those possibilities. Whatever we end up with, we really intend for there to be good treatment possibilities.
Yes, because years ago we had a mental health facility, a state hospital, and I had to admit my brother there years ago. And all I had to do was reach out. They took my brother in. And right now today, this was years ago, 25 years ago, they're still supporting him.
Oh,
and I wish I had that support for my son.
The state is really recognizing that this is a major problem. I guess we have one mental health hospital in the state that's always completely full. So unfortunately, we end up housing people in our jail while we're waiting for them to be able to go to this. So I think there are better ways to do that. Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Yes.
Thank you.
And please continue to come.
I will. Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Can I go back? Okay.
Does anyone else have anything to say?
There are comments in the chat if individuals don't want to come up front either.
Yeah, Jim Shelton, did you have something to say?
Good afternoon. Hi, this is Jim Shelton. Yes, I have something to say. I'm a CASA. I've been a CASA now for 10 years. And every case I've had, at least one of the parents has been involved in the criminal justice system. So just some things that I think might be useful in terms of trying to figure out why people are in the jail so long between judicial events. I invite you, Judge Stafford just mentioned mycase.in.gov. Go find a case and go look at that and go look at one of the records and look at, there will be page after page after page after page after page of entries. And a whole bunch of them will be pretrial conference, pretrial conference, pretrial conference, pretrial conference, initial hearing, initial hearing, initial hearing. And there's no indication for any of those what the outcome was, other than there's going to be another initial hearing or another pretrial conference. So when you're gathering data, I think it would be useful to record what happened. Why was it necessary? And they may all be great reasons. I don't know. I'm just a CASA. I'm just dealing with the fact that these cases, I had a dad who was accused of beating another man with a hammer, and the case went literally 2 years before now he was not incarcerated, but it went 2 years before the case was resolved by a plea deal. So I think tracking those things would be good. And you might find some problems such as we don't have enough public defenders. I have sat for literally hours waiting for a hearing to happen because the public defender was very busy upstairs in a criminal hearing that was scheduled at about the same time. So I invite you to look into those kinds of things. I applaud what you're doing, and I wish you the very best of luck. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. And certainly that is a big part of what we're going to be looking at. Or actually, I shouldn't say we, because that's actually the business of the courts and prosecutor and public defender. But we're hoping that they'll be able to at least shine some light on that. And then is that Patricia? Pamela? Pamela, do you have something to say?
Yes. Hi. I'm waiting for the clock to start again. Okay, great. This is Pamela Davidson. Hello to all of you. I think I know all of you practically. I feel so terrible that lovely woman just lost her son. I just want to say how sorry I am about that. That's just so terrible. I just want to say that first. I'm glad you're all working on this. I'm glad that health and substance abuse and treatment and the mentally ill are all very important, because they really are. That's the majority population in our jail. We know that the state of Indiana years ago said, we're going to build some mental illness facilities and house more people. They never did it. We're worse off now than 10 years or so ago when they announced that. So that is a dearth. And Lee, you're right. There's a shortage of people who can work in those facilities and are available. But I love that goal. You're so right. The jail has to have treatment options, programming, all those things. We just read recidivism is really high, and there's a darn good reason for that. A darn deliberate lack of alternative options. I love the guy who just spoke a minute ago, because we heard that too many continuances was in that jail study. They said there's way too many kick the can down the road on the court proceedings. So Lee, I know you all can't affect that, but the judges and the prosecutors ought to turn that ship around, because that's a huge, big problem, and the study revealed it. But one of the things I've been very concerned about, and this is my second time to listen, and I'll listen again, I should be there, but I wish, as you collect data, there was a study that looked at who are we jailing, even temporarily, for nonviolent, minor things, versus who are we jailing for violent. They should be there. They're a danger to society or to others. The majority of people, we all know that, are nonviolent people, and that would be the substance abuse, and that would be the mentally ill, absolutely so. But there's minor things. So as you're looking at data collection, I surely hope there'd be some kind of light shown on, are we arresting and jailing quality or quantity? Because I think it's quantity. When I've gone to the Justice Building and gone upstairs and looked at the scroll of cases, and those are criminal, eviction, other things, it's horrifying. It's horrifying how many pages there are and how overburdened. So let's try to stop some of the traffic. Say, let's stop putting those people in. Otherwise, the jail will be full immediately. It'll be full before it's built. If we do not change our viewfinder as to who we incarcerate at all and get that message out to the law enforcement, we will be exactly in the same spot we are now. So that's my point. I see my time's out. Thank you. And let's try to house fewer nonviolent people. We shouldn't be. It's lifelong trauma. We all know it. Thank you.
Thank you, Pam. And can you see courthouse? I can't quite see that. Oh, okay. Anyone in here want to make a comment? Do any of you have anything else you want to add? Yes,
TSD, are there written comments in the Zoom? I'm not logged on, and I don't know if we've read all those out.
Yes, there is one comment.
Thank you.
If you scroll down and make it visible, I can read it out loud.
You got it? Yeah. Okay. This is from Kevin Weinberg. Hi, I just wanted to highlight the scope of the CJRC described on the website to review and recommend from the RJAS reports. Hold on, scroll down a little bit. Particularly as it relates to community resources necessary to divert individuals from the system or, hold on, sorry. To divert individuals from the system or transition individuals once released from the criminal justice system. Focusing exclusively on designing a new jail seems borderline out of scope, but definite. I'm also going to highlight a passage from the RJS report. Jail is never going to be an effective mental health treatment provider and should not be relied upon as such. Let's see. Let's see. Okay. So, and that speaks to the point that Karen made, I think earlier. The question is whether you have jailers watching people or whether you have medical providers in the facility. So if you have a medical facility with security such that the courts would feel comfortable ordering somebody there, the question is do you just have a jailer watching the person or do you have medical providers treating the person? And I think that's the conversation that the commissioners are. Yeah, or a combination. So, and that I think speaks to the point you were making earlier that we may need to educate and train providers.
Yes.
And that's where the university comes in.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just in support of what Ms. Rembeck was saying, I would add, I think the point is if you're depriving someone of their liberty, whether you call it a treatment facility or it's a jail.
Right.
So I just think that as we're having those discussions, we need to acknowledge that. Because if we're under those conditions, that's what it is.
Yeah, they do have their freedom removed for sure at that point. Yep.
Yeah.
So, all right. Are there any other questions, comments?
Sam.
So back on the topic of tours, September 20th or 21st, I had Dina Delaudemeyer send out an email to everyone asking about jail tours. And I only had one person respond to me, just one. I never got them. So
The responses might have gone to Dina. I wonder if
it might be.
didn't go to where they should go.
I only received one response. So part of this thing for Wednesday is on me because I didn't think there was much interest. Second thing on tours, my contact in Franklin County wants to know if we want him to pick dates or if we want to pick a date. So I don't know which is preferable. But I know that it needs to be somewhat soon.
I think it is maybe easier if they pick a date or maybe several dates.
Okay.
And let us find one when the majority of us can go.
All right, that's fine. And that's all I have.
All right. Anything else there on Zoom?
I actually have a comment. I kind of want to circle back to initially, several meetings ago, we had talked, in addition to public comment, we also had talked about making a public input on our website.
Yes.
And as I personally prepped for today's meeting, since I was out last week, I had, because I'm a cats nerd, I had messaged cats because I didn't see it last week, like on the cat's website. And then I ended up getting it for, I found the recording for today, or from last week today. And as I look at the website, and I've also had constituents also ask about this too, it's not very friendly in terms of what people can see, in terms of like the meetings. So I guess my thing is, I see that on here, it says watch public meetings on cats, but it takes it to the whole cats website and not specifically to like this. I don't know if that's something that we can do. But the other part is, again, is trying to make sure that public input feels like they can say things to us, and have an input on there, and then it be forwarded. We can do what we want with it. You can delete it or you can read it or respond, however you feel like it. But I think for me, as a counselor, as we all are invested in this, I think it's really important that somewhere, somehow, we can have the public comment or input rather on the website. And then I think the last thing that I will say is, it's just me. I'm just reading the room in terms of things, but I do think like the whole committee as a whole, we're all here because we all are invested to make sure that we don't have a facility that is housing folks that are of mental health, that have mental health issues, substance use issues, as well as other issues that are related to people being housed. Myself, my father was a person of that, and that it was ultimately the cause of his demise last year. So this is a personal thing for me, as well as something that as a public servant. I say all that to say that I want to make sure and be mindful of the fact that we all are on one accord and that we're not in a silo group where this person knows what's going on and this person doesn't know. And then as we come to the meeting, there's a surprise of some sort that things are already being worked on. Because what I'm picking up from this meeting, it feels like that we want to make sure that we are all under accord, whether it's taking a tour or whatever the case is. I just want us to make sure that we are working collaboratively together, because that's the reason why we ultimately opened it up for more people, to make sure that everybody feel like they are being a part of this. So that's just a comment and takeaway from today.
Yeah, I think something that needs to be recognized is that the commissioners and to some extent the council have been considering all of this for about 4 years now. So it's a little hard for us to really catch everyone up on what's happened and what's been discussed during all that time. As Sam said, he was under the impression no one was interested in the tour. And that's why it went like that. So maybe make a point of really checking your emails if it has something to do with this committee. Look and see if there's something you need to respond to.
There's another public comment request online.
Renee Miller. Would you like to say something, Renee?
I think you're unmuted. You can go ahead. Renee, can you hear us? If you can, go ahead and talk.
Okay. Can you hear us now?
Yes.
All right. I have a statement I want to read for Donielle Bird. She's having trouble getting in.
Social worker.
She was the social worker of the year and has extensive background in the area. And she would like to note that while it's clear that our current jail needs improvements, I have toured the jail and read the consultant reports. Many of the issues identified in the consultant reports are maintenance issues. In regards to the space concern, our current jail can hold 294 people, which is more than the average count for the last 5 years, according to the consultant reports. Renovation of the current jail has not been fully considered or adequately discussed, nor have considerations been made for tangible ways to decrease our jail population in order to make a redesign more feasible. Please note, based on the consultant reports, we already jail people with mental health and SUD well above the national average. None of the top 10 booking types involve violent crime. All are related to substance misuse. Jail is a terrible place for people to get care. It is also the most costly and will be billed to our county as opposed to Medicaid or private insurance. Also, I would urge you all to consider the impact on the environment. Karst and wetland areas are important to our groundwater. The added transportation to and from that distance is also impactful to the environment. In closing, I believe that our tax money would be better spent to enhance our community services and to divert people from incarceration.
And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. It's 12. Anything else? You ready to close the meeting?
Yeah. Anyone have anything before?
Can I say one thing
Yeah.
at the risk of delaying people's dinner? Is that I have been taking notes and I believe that Margie will continue to send out those things. So I've included upcoming dates to remember. I took some brief notes on public comment, and I've also kind of beefed up like kind of the questions that you all have raised during the agenda items, so that as we're moving forward, we are addressing the topics much as last meeting we were talking about why isn't transportation included, and today we talked a lot about transportation. Obviously, we didn't solve it, but we're making steps forward. So I just wanted to make sure that everyone can see that we're listening.
Great. Thank you, Peter. Oh, and I did want to mention, Jen, that we're about to put a question up on the website for people to, yeah. And we're adjourned. Thanks, everyone.